Oh, Reinhardt just joined.
Oh, good, good.
Oh, they're ready to start.
Are you ready in the courtroom?
Yes, we are. I'm going to hit the,
The Ramsey County Board of Commissioners meeting is now called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Fredum.
Here.
Maris Castillo.
Here.
McDonough.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Here.
And Carter.
Here. Thank you very much. Would we please ask Commissioner Ortega to say the pledge for us while the rest of us go on mute and also observe? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega. Board members, the agenda of our October 12th meeting is before you. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Madam Chair. McGuire. Second. Reinhardt.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McGuire and Commissioner Reinhardt, for the motion and second. Are there any questions or comments on the agenda before we move it? We'll ask the clerk then to please call the roll.
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Fredum.
Aye.
Maris Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
And Carter.
Aye, thank you. The agenda is approved, and we also have the minutes of our October 5th meeting before you.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and second. I believe that was Commissioner McGuire and Commissioner Ortega. Are there any comments on the agenda or the minutes? I'm sorry, on the minutes. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ortega.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Fredum.
Aye.
Maris Castillo.
Aye.
McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
And Carter.
Aye, and thank you. The October minutes are approved, and we have the opportunity today to lift up some very special work that is done in our community on behalf of individuals, children, and families in the community. I'm going to be calling on Commissioners Maris Castillo and Commissioner McDonough for two proclamations in the honor of our licensed child care providers and then our foster care providers. First, I'll call on Commissioner Maris Castillo for the proclamation for Licensed Family Child Care Provider Appreciation Day. Commissioner Maris Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And on behalf of the commissioners, I'm excited to do this proclamation. If you recall, a couple years ago when we could be in person, we had the chambers filled with young kiddos who stole the show. And though they're not, we're not physically together, I do know there's a group of kids watching and excited. And so this is a great opportunity. And I know Commissioner McDonough's got a few kiddos in his background too to cheer this on. So thank you for that. Let me read the proclamation. Whereas children are one of our greatest resources and strengths, and whereas Ramsey County is committed to the nurturing of children, and whereas licensed family child care providers are essential workers provide a safe and healthy environment that fosters the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social development of children. And whereas Ramsey County has nearly 400 licensed family child care providers caring for 4,000 children. And whereas childcare providers have been working even harder during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic to support their communities, provide nurturing care to children during challenging times, help school-age children with remote learning, following new health and safety guidelines, and teach children how to stay physically distanced, all while facing the risk of exposure to the virus. And whereas licensed family child care providers were honored for the 44th annual recognition on October 7th, 2021. And whereas 10 providers received 5-year awards, 4 providers received 10-year awards, 6 providers received 15-year awards, 10 providers received 20-year awards, 11 providers received 25-year awards, 9 providers received 30-year awards, 5 providers received 35-year awards, and 5 providers received 40-year awards. And whereas Susan Kramer and Junie Piltz received 45-year awards. Now there be it proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners designates October 12, 2021 as Licensed Family Child Care Provider Appreciation Day. Let's do a round of applause for all those providers and for Susan Kramer and Judy Piltz for their 45-year awards, which is really incredible. Think about the numbers of kids they've impacted and generations that they have impacted with quality childcare. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce a familiar face here at the board, Brian Thien, who is the Manager of Family Support Programs and Social Services. Brian himself has been with the county for over 25 years, serving in a variety of positions, having worked in mental health, case management, crisis services, as well as his current manager position overseeing a variety of areas within children and family services. And so welcome, Brian, back to the board and let you introduce the folks with us. And you can see Cindy Cunningham with the kiddos watching there and all of our other providers. So Brian.
Thank you, Commissioner Mattis Castillo. I'm really honored to be here today. You know, I think your proclamation has said it all. That our kiddos are really well cared for in our licensed in-home childcare, and I think our residents have chosen our family childcare homes because they really do like this family environment and the smaller number of kids who are present in their homes, and they know they can go to work every day and they know their kids are loved and cared for, right? And as the proclamation, you know, is talked about, they really work with parents to promote their children's growth and development, and they also have to have some kind of fun and positive learning environment to, you know, keep kids safe during this time of COVID and get the wiggle butts out, right? they're trying to, everyone trying to survive through COVID. And so our providers, they wear so many hats in addition to all the things they once did before the pandemic hit, and they're continuing to do so as they make these same safe, loving, and caring homes that they've always done. And they've all found ways to keep their own family and themselves and the kids that they care for safe from this unknown virus that's still developing around us everywhere. And they've had to communicate with the teachers and do school work with kids who have special needs, and all while maintaining their childcare. And after that, they spend hours every night, you know, after the family care closes, and they sanitize and they find more supplies and they shop again for another day. And so our residents have entrusted the care of their kids with these homes and that are supportive and loving. They really are part of our essential workforce. And so we have a lot to be proud of when we think of our providers in the community. They really have woven themselves into the fabric of our community and the lives of our family and kids. And so I want to say thank you to our providers. And Cindy is on with us today here, Cindy Cunningham. Hi, Cindy, and some kids too as well, also waving. And Cindy's been a provider of ours for over 20 years. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's more than 20. And she's also in our in the NICPIN public policy, and she's the chairperson. She's been a resource for our childcare providers throughout the state of Minnesota and also locally with the association here in Ramsey County. Cindy is really a great advocate for the developmental needs of our kids and also for the service needs of our providers. She holds them both close to her heart and represents the needs of our kids and our family to our legislators and makes the system really work better for everybody. So thank you for all you do, Cindy. And thank you as well. I want to also just say thank you as well to the workers out there. They also help provide all these essential tasks about licensing a home and ensuring the building is structurally safe. And while they're responding to all these legislative changes, they're also assisting our providers with resources, helping them, get referred to grants and, just being a good listening ear, right, to make sure that things are working smoothly. So thank you. Shout out there to Ida and Jay. I see her. She's the supervisor of our of our family child care. I don't know. I don't have my whole screen up. I think Shannon out there, Sean, Peggy, and there's others watching from afar. So thank you, everybody in family child care. You make me proud to come to work every day.
Brian, thank you so very much for being here to represent and tell the story of our family child care providers who do such incredible work for all of us, the most important work of helping us to raise and develop our young people. We're just so thankful for all of the work that they do. Cindy, thank you for bringing the children here with us. And thanks so much for the work that you do in Ramsey County and throughout the state. I lost Cindy's picture somewhere, and I don't know, maybe she had to hop off. Oh, there you go. There you go. Thank you. And also thanks to the staff who are here. I don't know if we got all of the names, and if everybody wants to pop on, if you work in this area and just say hello, we want to just make sure that we acknowledge all of you for the work that you're doing. Is that okay, Brian?
Yeah, there's more on here from the other teams as well. But yes, I easily could have missed everybody in this maze. So
well, let's just say if you are working with family child care providers, please pop in and say your name. Let's see, I see Wendy Ross. I'm not sure who here is actually being represented, but okay, that's awkward, huh?
Hi, I'm here. Yay, with
No,
family
they're
child care.
here. They're here. Shannon. This is Ida. Good morning, everybody. And we're grateful to be recognized. I have a team of 10, including myself. And I can see Shannon Draper. Shannon, I can see, and Shannon is actually the licensor for Cindy. So Shannon, you want to say hi?
Hi, good morning.
Thank you.
To be here. I'm happy. I'm so happy for all the work that our child care providers do, especially Cindy's awesome. She's been my provider. I've been working with her for about 5.5 years, and she does awesome work. We're lucky to have her, and we have a ton of amazing providers that have worked their butts off.
Thank you.
Better phrasing. Throughout the pandemic, it's been challenging, and they have the COVID pandemic in their faces, in their homes at all the time. They work after hours to make sure that their kids are safe, their own families, as well as the families that they care for. And it's amazing. And I'm so proud to be a part of this program and to work with providers that are so dedicated to developing our future, the youth of our future.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Shannon.
you so much. Do we miss anybody else?
Yeah, there's Jote, there's Jen Whitman. Yeah, you guys just say hi real quick.
Real quick.
Hi, and I just want to acknowledge that my provider, 45 years in the making, Susan Kramer, is also here. I saw her name here. So congratulations to you, Susan. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you for acknowledging an additional provider, Susan. Thank you. Thank you to Susan also.
Jote.
Hello, my name is Jote Kamada. I've been with childcare licensing for over 9 years. I'm proud of what I am doing, and I'm proud of all our providers who are working hard and nurturing our kiddos to grow to maturity. And thanks for the leadership for coming out and recognizing all what we do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyote. Thank you. Anyone else?
Jan Witzman. Jan?
Hi, I'm Jen Witzman. I'm the clerk of the unit. And kind of a funny thing is when I started the county 22 years ago, I started in childcare licensing. Then I moved over to child protection and a bunch of other places. And guess what? I'm back.
Thanks for being back. We appreciate
and
you.
I love working here. It's great.
Thank
Everybody
you.
I work with is awesome.
Thank you.
Am I missing anybody? Okay.
Ida, thank you.
I represent everybody else that's not here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I know there are other team members, but it's just so good to hear from you all today and to have you here with us to recognize the body of work that you do together with our providers. Thank you to all the providers who are here. And thank you also to Commissioner Maris Castillo. I don't see hands up from board. Oh, yes, I do see Commissioner Fretham's hand up. Commissioner Fretham.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to share my own appreciation for family child care providers. It's the first time in many years I haven't been using a family child care provider for child care now that both of my kiddos are in school, but so grateful for the work that they do. Grateful that Cindy is here. I know she's a member on our child care subcommittee that's transitioning to early child care and education advisory committee. So grateful for her participation in that work. And just wanted to reiterate that our family child care providers, they do wear a lot of hats. When they are small business owners, they need to administer their own small business. They're early childhood educators. They provide customer service. But more than that, family child care is a critical part of our infrastructure in the community. It is an economic driver. Being able to afford child care is a challenge for most families. Families pay far more than the 7% of one's income to cover their childcare expenses. That's considered affordable. And family child care providers provide that a critical step for especially for families that can't afford center-based care but don't qualify for assistance programs. And they often do it at wages that are very low for what the critical importance of the service they're providing in terms of children's long-term development, in terms of the economic supports that they provide for the community and other businesses and for families. And so just reiterating a commitment to our family child care providers that we see them, they are so important, and really hopeful that in the coming years, as we continue to work for reform and comprehensive support for the infrastructure that is childcare in general, that we can really provide that focus for family child care where some of our most critical support is offered, and that can often provide the best, most culturally responsive care for a lot of families. So thank you for your work and your efforts. You are so important.
Thank you so much. I want to turn also to Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner McGuire and Commissioner Fretham are working daily on behalf of all of us and with all of us to support those who care for our youngest children. Commissioner McGuire, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's what I wanted to do as well. Commissioner Fretham brought it up, but we're so proud of our team at Ramsey County and of all of our community partners. And we've been thanking Cindy Cunningham because she's an integral part of this, but the early care and education for children efforts that we've got going on, and we're just making it part of our fabric in Ramsey County too, is our care for our youngest children. And I just couldn't be more excited about the movements that our county is making in this effort with our partners in the community. And so just many thanks to everyone who's involved in that. And of course, many thanks to all the people on this call who are really, so as Commissioner Fretham and as we've all been saying, are integrally part of our community.
Yay. Thank you. Once again, I think we just need to give a big round of applause for our family child care providers in appreciation. Thank you so much. Great to have you here today. And I am going now to call on Commissioner McDonough for the proclamation for Foster Care Provider Appreciation Day. Commissioner McDonough.
Thanks, Chair Carter. We've been able to spend the last few minutes honoring and recognizing individuals and families who step up to help support our families in child caregiving so that those families can provide support and opportunities for them. And now we're going to spend the next few minutes honoring individuals and families who step up in our community to provide support for children and adults when things aren't quite going right in their homes and they need a moment where they can get some safe space and some support to help that family figure out how to be able to move forward in a way that benefits the child and or adult that we're working with here. So I'm going to read the proclamation. Ramsey County works with families to safely plan and keep children safe in their homes whenever possible, working diligently to locate family, kin to foster children when needed. Ramsey County provides resources to support family and kin and has increased the percentage of foster care providers who are family or kin to 72% in 2020. And I just want to take a moment here. That's a pretty big deal because the connection to family is so important for that child and or adult who needs that moment, the stability that brings. And that wasn't always the case in foster care, that wasn't always recognized as how important that was. And so I want to recognize that in Ramsey County, 72% are kin or family. Whereas foster care providers open their homes and hearts to those who are vulnerable and in need, whereas Ramsey County has approximately 390 licensed child care foster care providers and 104 licensed adult foster care homes with over 550 children and over 300 adults in foster homes last year. Whereas foster care providers provide not only food and shelter, but also safe and healthy environments that cultivate the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social development of adults and children. Whereas foster care providers need wisdom, patience, and humor to ensure that the children and adults they care for feel safe and loved, because those children and adults are often scared, depressed, or have a hard time trusting others. Whereas foster care providers face even more challenges during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, because many of them have cared for or experienced adversity and trauma, and they are more vulnerable to the changes that come with school closings, lack of daily contact with friends and mentors, and other forms of social distancing. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners designates October 12th, 2021 as Foster Care Provider Appreciation Day in Ramsey County. Big round of applause to all the providers and to our support staff who help support them. And Brian, you're up again here. I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Commissioner McDonough, and all of you for recognizing our foster care teams today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about adult foster care and then child foster care, because there's two whole teams here today. So, as you know, our adult foster care is they help license living arrangements in a private home, right? That provides food and lodging and supervision and support to vulnerable adults. And these are, folks who are unable to continue living independently on in their own homes in the community. And so they do anything and everything. They provide, any one of a number of variety of tasks on any given day: transportation, medication assistance, independent living skills, socializing opportunities, and they provide care for our adults in a way that really supports them to reach their life goals. And some of our providers have given their entire career to adult foster care, much like our previous proclamation. We have some people who've been doing, adult foster care for 30 and more years, right? And they've made like actually, in fact, permanent homes for adults who have come to live with them. And so prior to COVID, a lot of our adults had day activities that they could do. Maybe they went to a part-time job or a volunteer job or a social group. or attended some kind of day programming. And for more than a year, or however long COVID's around, 18 months, they've had to do a lot of accommodations in their own homes, right? To work with residents and essentially shelter in place. Like adults that were doing things in the community now have to find something to do in their homes, right? And that's difficult to do during this vacuum of activity out in the community, right? And so fortunately, or recently, case managers have been able to get adults reconnected to the things that they care about also in the community as services are opening up again. And so today we have, I think, is Dennis here? I'm sorry, I can't see my whole screen, but Dennis Morgan, he is one of our providers that we're also recognizing because he's one of those providers who's been doing this kind of work for more than 25 years. You know, pretty much Dennis's life is his resident's life. He's a proactive, engaged kind of guy. He cares for his folks. He cares for the adult men in his home, and he makes sure that their needs are met. And Dennis is actually the prototype of an adult foster care provider that we want all our providers to be for that very reason, right? He's had the same 4 men with him over the years, and they truly are family. They've made family amongst themselves, right? So behind the scenes, if we can have more Dennises, that's what we're looking for. So thank you for all that you do, Dennis, and in adult foster care. And then I also want to make sure that we recognize our adult foster care team. You know, during COVID, they've opened new homes. They've gone out and done safety checks. They've done walkthroughs for people to make sure that they could apply for their license, and they made sure that everyone's met their licensing standards. And when tensions rose in the homes, you know, the staff for additional supports to the residents, to the homes, and they didn't disrupt, right? They weren't sent to the hospitals. They were remaining in their homes during this difficult time. And they were kept safe, right? And working together with the providers to keep their homes safe and sound. So thank you to also my adult foster care team. And I see Hanan out there. Hanan is the supervisor for our adult foster care team. I've seen Jim Kepfer out there, and Jim and actually Boris Hugger work a lot with Dennis. And I don't know if I see other ones. I can't tell. So Hanan, can you help me if there's anybody else out there from your team?
I don't see anyone else from the adult foster care team.
It's a small but mighty team. There's at least, we have 5 of them, I think, licensing staff, and we also have Jody in our, who's provides our support, administrative support services. So thank you, adult foster care.
Brian, thank you so much for being here to represent both areas of this work. And in the adult foster care area, we understand how critical it is for people to have the support when they can't live at home or when there are special circumstances for which special care is needed. And we are so thankful for all who join us either on the team here at Ramsey County or in the community as foster care providers to ensure that that special care and attention at times as needed is able to be provided. Thank you for mentioning the providers who are here. Thank you for mentioning the staff who are here. With so many on the line, it is certainly difficult to have everybody say something. I did that last time. You know, I think you've recognized everyone, and that is what is important, that we are able to see and say thank you so much to all of you who are here to do this work with us. I will look to board members in case there are comments or additional accolades. We all recognize and appreciate your work. Commissioner Matas-Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to also say thank you to all of our families that are willing to open their homes and grow their own family, even if it's temporary. This is not an easy task, as we know, people who are not always coming, but come with lots of issues, right? And they're just looking for a safe place to be loved. And so to just thank all of the families that are willing to open their homes and more importantly, open their hearts. to share that love with our community that is most in need. So thank you so much. And thank you for the whole team who works to make sure that those families then are resourced and cared for. Because I know you often get calls saying, we need this, or we need help, or how do we connect this individual with more resources that you're learning about. So thank you to your whole team, Brian, for all this work, and to all of our families that are growing their hearts for our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Matis Castillo. So well said on behalf of all of us. Once again, we appreciate the recognition of the teams that provide extended family for so many who are in need, and especially then to our licensed foster care providers who are here with us. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with us, and to the team as well.
And
one more, I'm sorry, who was that? I heard someone. Was that you, Brian?
Yeah, and I don't want to interrupt if we have another accolade. If not, I also wanted to acknowledge our child foster care team who's also here.
Thank you. Did you, are there additional people whose names you had not mentioned that you wanted to mention, Brian?
Yes.
Thank
so I was, so I had originally talked about adult foster care, but I also want to mention them with child foster care that.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah. So that part of the proclamation is also important to emphasize, right? Because our child foster care are the folks who provide temporary homes for kids whose parents and guardians can't take care of them right now. And it's a tender moment for children to transition into another person's home. And as Commissioner McDonough had read, we've done a great job at trying to keep families intact, right? So when we believe that kids do the best in permanent, safe, and nurturing homes with lifelong relationships with caring adults. And so we place kids with family and relatives and kin for that very reason. And that's why we're at 72%. I think if I've heard it right, 49% is the average for the state. So Ramsey County rocks. so our foster parents rock. They do everything to help with appointments, education, all that kinds of stuff that we need to do during COVID, right? And make sure that children find safety and trust in their homes, within their community while they're waiting to hopefully reunify with their family. And our foster parents have done a lot to add to the lives of the kids in their care. They've had to become teachers to homeschool everybody and their own children and foster children. They've learned technologies so they can keep up with the children and ensure homework gets done somehow. And many of the foster care parents themselves are juggling the tasks of their own remote work while assisting the kids in their home with schooling and ensuring that they get outdoors to, like I mentioned before, get the wiggle butts out, right? And trying to help with the multitude of appointments and everything else that needs to get done on day-to-day life in foster care. And I believe we have Evelyn Morales here, who has been a foster provider for more than 10 years for children in foster care. Evelyn is great with families, and she works well with parents and thinks about resources that they need. She's a very resourceful foster care provider and keeps the kids' best interests always in her mind. She knows, she's actually known for her ability to maintain connections to kiddos after they leave her care. And she does things to help kids feel welcome and safe in her home. She helps them adjust to their living environment. She redecorates their room, repaints, buys bathroom caddies, does what she needs to do to make sure that kids feel like part of her family while they're there. So
wait a minute, how do you know all this?
Well, you're well talked about. And so I know because your licensor, Sarah, loves working with you. So
thank you so much.
You're welcome. And to our workers, to the Sarah and to everyone else in our child foster care team, they've helped do all this work with the governor's mandates. They made sure that relative and professional providers are getting through the confusing statutes. They're doing home visits, their safety checks, they're making sure the homes are working and functioning, and their licensing even during COVID. So thank you out there to Hanan Ahmed also. She's a supervisor also in this program, half in adults, half in children, and also Tally Jordan, who is their other licensing supervisor. And then Sarah Contreras might be out there, Barb Cannon. These are people I know are going to come. Maybe Margie Middleset, Patrick Mua, True Tao, Corey Doyle. I can't, again, see all of you, but I'm hoping I'm getting most of you. So Tally, or can you help me if I'm missing anybody from childcare, child
Sure,
foster care?
I can see Karen Franklin, Durr.
Oh,
Let's see, Heather Provo, Tulor, Jim Paquette, Corey, Patrick, Francis Sanders, yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you for mentioning the names for us. Are there others or help that you might need for somebody to just call out who they are and where they work? Nothing more. Sarah, thank you. And Brian, thank you. I should turn to you for final comments, and Brian?
I'm proud every day to come to work at Ramsey County. The 25 years have gone by fast, gotten a few gray hairs, but it's all because of love of everything that we do. And I'm really proud of my team. So thank you, all of you commissioners, for taking time to recognize what we do here at Ramsey County and Social Services.
Tony, you're
the
on mute.
connections that you
there you go.
make to providers in our community. We thank the providers who are here with us as well. Evelyn, the stories of your work and that of others in our community do get shared and appreciated on a daily basis. So thank you so very much to all of you. I know the recognition and appreciation is shared by each member of the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. I'm looking to see if there is anyone who wanted to add to the comments at this point in time. Our appreciation for you is ongoing and great. And we are just so very honored to be able to share this proclamation in your honor today. Again, to all of the teams that are here, to all of our providers, thank you so very much from the bottom of our hearts and from our community as well. Right, that was exciting and fun, and we had so many people on with us today. It's great to be able to see them, to hear their names, to know where and how they are working for us. And with that, we are going to press on in our agenda with much to complete yet today. And turn to our County Manager, Ryan O'Connor, for our COVID update.
Thank you, Madam Chair
County
and
Manager.
members. Good morning. And we're going to tighten up our update today. Public Health Director Sarah Holly will do the backbone of that update. We have the full crew here for other public health questions, should you have them. But, you know, in many cases, we're kind of in a, I don't want to say a holding pattern, but a repetitive pattern around what the Delta variant looks like. What are we seeing week to week? And so we're going to tighten up some of our updates here in the coming weeks. We want to keep it coming in front of you, but we may not have all presenters every single week, but we will take any questions and all questions that you may have. Finally, after Sarah goes, I'll follow up with an update on the upcoming November 1st timeline as it relates to vaccine testing, flexible work policy, and phase 1 of implementing our return to office. Director Holly.
Thank you, County Manager, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Happy fall again. As County Manager O'Connor mentioned, not a lot has changed as of last week, with the highly infectious Delta variant continuing to be the dominant strain here in Minnesota and in Ramsey County. As you know, the level of community transmission in Ramsey County continues to be high, with all of the 7-county metro area also seeing the same trend, and with high levels of community transmission across the United States. As of July 27th, we were only at about 54 cases COVID here in Ramsey County. As of yesterday, October 11th, we are at about 191 cases per 100,000. I want to mention this morning that our positivity rates are rising each week, which is concerning as we head into the colder months of this year with more people inside. We most definitely want to try to slow this trend as much as possible through our continued mitigation strategies. So masking, vaccines, and testing will be important as we move forward. Now I'd like to go over to our vaccine dashboard. I think Michael Lindsay has that ready. We have a bit of good news. As of yesterday, October 11th, all Ramsey County zip codes have now reached 70% population vaccinated with one or more doses. So a round of applause for that. That's great news. Zip codes of interest, thanks Mike, 55103, 55106, and 55130 are making steady progress in increasing vaccination uptake. And if you remember back to May of this year, Research and Public Health partnered to focus in on these zip codes to try to increase vaccination rates. And so I just want to point out that for the 55103 zip code, 71%, so that's up from 70% as of last week. For our 55103 zip code, 73%, which is up from 72%. And for our 55130 zip code, we've crossed the 70% mark, which is up from 69% as of last week. So this is really good news. Ramsey counties, Mike, can you scroll up a little bit? There you go. Ramsey County's overall vaccination rates, we're sitting at 76% of Ramsey County residents have received at least one vaccine dose. For our 16 plus population in Ramsey County, 72.4% of those eligible have completed a vaccine series. So there's really no change there. And we're remaining at 76.4% for those 16 plus having received at least one dose. Now I'll shift over to our 12 plus population with 71.5% of our county residents completing at least the series of vaccines. So that's really holding steady as we move forward. And we're also seeing around 75.7% of those 12 plus having received one or more doses. So really no change there. Mike, if you want to scroll back down to our vaccine summary, that would be great. Right there. Thank you so much. Yep, summary as of, scroll up just a little bit. Or down, sorry, down. Down. Thanks. Shout out to Mike. I'm going to go back up just a little bit. Yep, keep going. Keep going. There we go, right there. Perfect. Summary, yep. All right, so I'll give the summary of our vaccine, administering vaccines here in Ramsey County. So we're over around 57,000 doses that have been administered at 378 clinics. And so we're also sitting at around 61,528 vaccines that have been given, including those given by our redistribution partners. During the past week, around 202 doses were administered through our 6 COVID vaccine clinics and across existing client services. For the week of October 10th through the 16th, St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health expects to administer about 250 doses. As mentioned before, Public Health will continue to monitor the level of community transmission very closely as we continue to try to mitigate the impact to this variant and also to the residents in Ramsey County. Now I'd like to move over to our operational update. This past week, we provided support for on-site vaccine at Ramsey County community and school-based clinics, as well as wrapping up our last school-based clinic sites. Of course, we have a number of reoccurring community sites. The Consulate of Mexico, Arlington Hills, and Oxford continue to be available for community. We also have a number of pop-up and community requested sites, the House of Refuge, Twin Cities Academy, and Maplewood Fire Department Open House. All right. Coming on this week, we have 5 total clinics as well, providing vaccines to clients in existing programs. As I mentioned before, some of those same providers. I also want to point out that the Tubman Shelter will come on as a pop-up site, and we're also going to be working with Harmony Education Center. Just a few things changing, some changing conditions that could impact our capacity and our demand. Of course, we started offering our 3rd dose vaccines as of last Saturday, October 9th, providing approximately 17 third doses. And so we'll continue that effort here in Ramsey County. This morning, if you were watching the news, it was stated that the FDA panel plans to review the other 2 vaccines for 3rd dose approval later this week. We've resumed providing vaccines to our shelter residents, which is really important. Shout out to Mark and his team, Carl and the entire vaccine team that are out there in community providing really important public health work. Preparations are underway to expand eligibility, of course, once we get that approval from the FDA for our 5 to 11-year-old populations that can get vaccines. So we're still kind of holding steady there, waiting to hear more news. Of course, Laura Anderson, our incident commander and team, will continue to work to sustain staff and resource capacity as we see an increase in demand as we enter this fall season and into the winter months for vaccines, but also just our COVID-19 response. Ramsey County Public Health will continue to offer the $50 incentive for first and second doses as a part of our vaccine incentive initiative. We gave out approximately 200 incentives this past week, so that's some good news. People are still coming in to get their vaccines, and we highly encourage that. I just want to wrap up by saying our COVID-19 mitigation work continues with our school partners, of course, to reduce the spread of COVID this year as we wait for vaccines to be approved for our 5 to 11-year-olds. Of course, I'm going to continue to recommend universal masking, weekly testing, and of course, getting vaccinated if you haven't already received your vaccine or when you're eligible. And we're really hopeful that perhaps as early as November 4th, we'll hear about our kiddos being able to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. So thank you, Madam Chair, County Board, County Manager O'Connor. We'll stand for any questions or comments this morning.
Thank you, Director Holly. I'm going to keep going on a couple other items before we wrap up. Just wanted to give a brief update regarding the progress of implementation of the vaccine and testing policy and process as of this week. By way of reminder, we've been posting messages to Ramsey News since the very beginning of September after the discussion here with the County Board about moving forward toward this policy. We officially posted notice to employees on September 14th on Ramsey News about the November 1st implementation plans associated with the vaccine and testing policy and process, and shared that information with the board per the request for board action, per the resolution passed by the board back in September. Human Resources has been working closely with the HR implementation group of staff in consultation with a broader vaccination and testing advisory team that involves the Deputy County Manager from Health and Wellness, leadership and representation from Public Health, Communications, the County Attorney's Office, Finance, and Compliance. As of October, here are some upcoming timelines of how our implementation is intended to look. Obviously, everything remains fluid in the moment as we continue to move on many fronts at once, but we are doing all that we can to hit these dates. The goal is October 18th to see our system for vaccine and testing implementation go live with training launched and communication begin to flow out at that time, meaning employees will be able to begin to complete their attestation and upload proof of vaccination prior to the November 1st implementation date. October 19th, which is next Tuesday, Ramsey News will run an article focused on this topic. And then October 20th through the 29th, there will be employee sessions hosted virtually with Public Health on the safety of vaccines and the overview of policy and procedures, as well as sessions for supervisors and managers and training for administrative personnel who are assisting. I don't think there's a thing every day on October 20th through the 29th. I should be clear, somewhere between October 20th and 29th. November 1st is the date the policy will become effective, as well as then testing requirements begin alongside the vaccine piece. The instructions to employees will have been out about how and where and what that is required to do to comply with the existing policy. Our hope is to have a report out on rates of compliance and understanding where we stand in full implementation on or around December 10th. I can answer any specific questions you may have or get you the answer as we go forward, but hopefully that gives you a sense of how we are moving ahead and the amount of work happening. We continue to work with our labor partners on this implementation. We continue to ensure that once the system is live, employees will have an opportunity, once they've completed their attestation and proof of vaccination to be eligible for the $100 incentive that was approved as a part of the implementation program. A lot of other steps underway. Thanks to everybody who's been a part of this and every employee who is taking direct actions to ensure that their coworkers and every member of the community remain as safe as possible. Finally, on flexible workplace and implementation of phase 1 return to work, The date for the implementation of the phase 1 areas of the organization, which include all entities within the courthouse, including the county board offices, the county manager's office, other staff, as well as human resources and finance over in Metro Square, plus all employees who would be designated as full-time on-site or mobile community-based employees. So employees that are already and have been working on sites throughout COVID-19. The date for implementation of the new flexible workplace policy is set for November 1st. Understandably, there are a lot of questions around, well, Delta is still among us. Our case rate spreads, as Director Holly just shared, are extremely high and concerning. Our CDC rate remains in a period of high transmission. So what does this mean? So there will be information going out near the end of this week to all phase 1 employees who would be a part of the option to select hybrid starting on November 1st as their new work environment. That information will share that because of the continued rate of transmission, that per the flexible workplace policy that will be implemented on November 1st, that we will begin our phase 1 in a remote first environment. Sometimes people ask what remote first means. Remote first is what we've been doing for the past year for all employees who have the opportunity to work remotely. In other words, there will be no immediate change of bringing more people closer together with a high risk of transmission beginning on November 1st. The biggest thing that changes is that we are then set for when we hit a point where the CDC announces that Ramsey County has reached a level of spread defined as either moderate or low, which continues to feel like that may be a little bit out into the future until we get the vaccinations for young people and others across our community. But when we hit that rate, employees in the phase 1 implementation will receive notification 14 days prior to being expected to begin their new work environment. So this moves us from a phase of arbitrary date setting for some future date in time to a CDC-guided designation based on health standards moving forward that would impact our phase 1 employees. If you are not a phase 1 employee, then there's really nothing that changes for you at this time. We're going to start with some of those entities in a leadership role to learn and adjust, and we will be providing additional information about phase 2 and 3 as we go. The initial plan had always been 60 days beyond phase 1, and so employees that are not impacted by phase 1 can expect that any changes to their current work status will not be occurring until sometime into the beginning of 2022 at the earliest. There's a ton there. There's a ton in Director Holly's update as well. There's a lot with vaccine and testing, and I think that kind of summarizes the level of work happening in the organization right now. I thank you for your time to let us share all these important updates, and we stand for any questions, Madam Chair, that we can help answer.
Thank you, County Manager, for the tight summary. I have a hand up. We do appreciate, in particular, the last update regarding flexible work policy and the phases of implementation of returning to work, that it defines the policy and that it also has flexibility to help us adjust as we move through the phases of COVID-19 in Ramsey County as well. I'll call on Commissioner Reinhardt, who has had her hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously the last 3 weeks, each Tuesday, we know that we are expecting a much higher number, and it is alarming. But with school back in session in person, it's also not surprising. And the fact that we have much younger people being impacted and contracting COVID-19 is also something that is alarming. My question is, we know that at least the Pfizer dosage for children is looking like it will be by the end of this month. The end of October is the best estimate I think we've been given. I would suspect that you're going to have a large influx of parents and kids. Honestly, it seems to be mostly the kids talking about it more so than the parents about wanting to get the vaccination. Are we prepared to have, once that is available, for the number of people or the number of kids that are going to want to be vaccinated? what is Ramsey County doing with that? Because I think we have to be ready for it because it's going to be a lot of kids, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt. We actually already have our schedule ready to go for this rollout.
Good.
So we are preparing as we speak for the rollout because we do know, as you mentioned, many kids are talking about getting their COVID vaccine. Of course, you have to get the permission of your parent, right? So
Right.
yes, we're expecting, we're hopeful that families, we have a big turnout of families, whole families, right? In our younger population, because if you look at just the situation update for Ramsey County, we do see still high community transmission in some of our youth and young adult populations. So we really want to pay attention to that. And so I'm just going to continue to encourage, if you're eligible to receive the vaccine, please do at one of our Ramsey County sites or a site statewide. There are a number of ways that you can receive a COVID-19 vaccine. But Commissioner Reinhardt and Madam Chair, we are in preparation for that November 4th date for our sites. We have an incredible vaccine team and response team, and we'll continue to assess the capacity that we have as things move forward. If we see a huge influx, we'll definitely be able to pivot. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for being prepared.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for your preparation. We appreciate the update. I have no further questions from county managers. I'll turn from county commissioners back to the county manager for your close.
Madam Chair, I too have no further questions nor comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we will take one brief moment acknowledging our COVID-19 presence and responding and recovery and all of the work that is going on together with our community and the multiple circumstances of economic and social distress, including our recent incident that occurred in our capital city this weekend, where many families were impacted and one young woman in the prime of her life lost her life. One moment. Thank you. Thank you, board members. We move on to policy items on our agenda, and we will have a presentation regarding a minimum floor on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco in Ramsey County with a presentation by our public health team. Policy item number 9 is on the agenda. It will be followed by policy item number 10, which is a support item for this particular presentation. Thank you. Calling on our health director, Sarah Holly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Madam Chair, just check in. Would you on the agenda? We have the administrative items listed before the policy items. Just wanted to check in on that.
Thank you for
before we
catching
start.
me on that. I appreciate it. So, with your forgiveness, I will go back to administrative items, and I am calling for administrative items on Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move item number 5, single source agreement with Deloitte Consulting for employee and retiree benefits. Item number 6, Ramsey County Emergency Communications Center security camera system replacement. Item number 7, termination of abatement agreement for the Llano Lakes expansion project. Item number 8, repurchase of tax forfeited property located at 1008 Carroll Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second. I'll second that, Madam Chair. Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega McGuire. There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions on these administrative items as we work to move them forward? I see no questions from board members. Would the clerk please call the roll on these items?
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Maras Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough, McGuire,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye, thank you very much. Those items have all passed. My apologies for trying to skip them entirely, and we will move on now to the policy agenda. I will be calling in case, unless County Manager O'Connor has comments before, on Public Health Director Sarah Holly
No, Madam Chair.
for then item number 9. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager O'Connor. Great to be back here at the podium to present this morning. I'll wait for Chang. Thank you, Director Chang. Wait to get the PowerPoint slides pulled up. Thank you so much. So good morning again. Sarah Holly, Director of St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health. I am joined by Ms. Selena Selfin. She's here to co-present with me this morning. Selena is a health educator with our statewide health improvement partnership program. And so we are here this morning to present and request your support of the minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco in Ramsey County. And so we're here to present information about the resolution that comes before you this morning. And so I'll turn it over to Selena to lead us in the discussion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, and County Manager, thank you for having us today to talk about the issue of tobacco price discounting and supporting a minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco. Price discounting is when tobacco companies target potential and current tobacco users with coupons and in-store discounts that lower the price of tobacco products such as cigarettes, vaping liquid, and chewing tobacco. People who receive tobacco coupons and promotions are more likely to start using tobacco and less likely to quit. As you can see in the examples on the slide, discounts can range from a few dollars off to getting 2 packs of cigarettes for $2. Price discounting can attract tobacco users as signage at the gas station or on the back of grocery store receipts. Or it can come in the form of glossy direct mailers, text messages, or app notifications, some of which expire in minutes, encouraging snap judgment purchases. We know that keeping tobacco prices high decreases the use of tobacco, especially amongst youth and lower income smokers. For instance, keeping cigarette pack prices above $10 and limiting discounting could lead to millions fewer smokers across the lifespan. 50% of Minnesota smokers have used tobacco coupons or promotions in the past year, and 1/3 of adult smokers use them every time they see them. Furthermore, young adults, non-smokers, who receive tobacco coupons are twice as likely to become smokers. And I'll turn it back to Sarah.
Thanks, Director Chang. So next slide, please. So again, today, St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health is asking the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners to support a minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco and the redemption of coupons and store discounts and on all tobacco products. As I mentioned earlier, this resolution would help advise and support current proposed St. Paul price discounting ordinances and in other cities also, potentially to help advise and support future Ramsey County cities and municipalities that wish to pass a similar ordinance. And so I'll just go over to slide 4 really briefly. We would not ask the Board of Commissioners to support this resolution if it wasn't, as Selena mentioned, both good for public health policy and both led and support by our diverse group of stakeholders in Ramsey County community. And you can see that on the screen. There are a number of partners that we've worked with over time to support tobacco resolutions. To provide a little history, after this board passed the resolution to help support restrictions on the sale of menthol tobacco products to adults only, tobacco only stores in 2017, community members, including those working with Ramsey County Tobacco Coalition, decided to want to pursue this next. They helped pass Minnesota Tobacco 21, which strengthened the National Tobacco 21 law by allowing local governments to conduct compliance checks and ensure the law is being followed. Simultaneously, they focused on how to end price discounting, which is really important. Community engagement in the form of focus groups, listening sessions, and key informant interviews showed how important preventing price discounting was to the Ramsey County community. Many community members were targeted by price discounting, as Selena mentioned earlier, found the practice predatory and wanted it to end. This led to the proposed St. Paul price discounting ordinance, which was first presented to the St. Paul City Council on October 6th, and this will be voted on October 27th. The proposed ordinance has the support of over 40 local and statewide organizations, including mental health organizations, medical provider groups, faith-based organizations, cultural coalitions, youth-serving organizations, and of course, 3 district councils. On this slide, again, you'll see the logos of many of those organizations that are in support of this resolution and ordinance. All 7 St. Paul City Council members have signed as co-authors of the St. Paul ordinance, and looking forward to seeing Mayor Carter also support this ordinance later this month. I'll turn it back over to Selena to wrap up.
Thank you. And could you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. We would also like to highlight the equity impact of the proposed resolution. Price discounting targets certain communities already disproportionately impacted by the harms of tobacco, such as racially and ethnically diverse communities, including African Americans and American Indians, women, youth, low-income populations, and LGBTQ individuals. To highlight one of the impacted groups, African Americans are more likely to use tobacco coupons or promotions, making them also more likely to start using tobacco and less likely to quit. Tobacco use is a major contributor to the 3 leading causes of death among African Americans, which are heart disease, cancer, and stroke. And that is all we have for you today. Thank you for allowing us to speak about the potential impacts of a minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco. We will stand for questions and comments.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It is so impressive to know the work that has been done by so many in our community as we look at this issue of tobacco use and the devastating impacts it has on health, in particular for those who are targeted, such as you have mentioned, from low-income communities, our youth, communities of color. I am going to check in with board members for questions or comments in this regard, and we will be moving forward toward the support item as well. Commissioner Maris Castillo, then Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I'll just start off by saying I'm fully supportive in any way we can reduce the use of tobacco in Ramsey County and across our country. When you say support a minimum floor price, what is that price? As a non-smoker, I have no idea how much it costs, but wondering what that price is, and then also in how do we address, and I know zoning is a city issue, but since we have a joint public health, one of the issues is the creation of more tobacco stores and how that's done. As in my district, there are many tobacco shops, which cause, all the things that are mentioned. And so how, as a county, do you think that we can support our communities in reducing the number of available places for tobacco purchases?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll let Selena answer the question too. I just want to recognize that I think Pachaski's also on the line this morning, Director Chang. She's our interim division or interim ship manager. So I just want to recognize that she's also on the call to take any questions too. Go ahead, Selena.
Okay. So the minimum price of cigarettes, for instance, is going to vary by brand. We're trying to get it to be around $10 because we can see that really positively affects health. So if you go to a small store, they're usually going to be around $12 to $14. Yeah.
And then the question just about, oh, go ahead, Madam Chair.
I was just going to say that the policy item that we're looking at right now does not control that. What we are looking at is the elimination of coupons or discounting in that regard, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And so there's much more work being done around the areas where Commissioner Maris Castillo has pointed to, and any final comments on that?
No, I think that, Madam Chair, Commissioner Maris Castillo, I think the issue of zoning is really going to be left up to our city jurisdictions and the ordinance that are being passed in that respect. I think, today we're here to gain the support of the board for just a resolution to support that. at the local level. So I think the issue of zoning, Commissioner Castillo, really lies with the cities and jurisdictions, but we can certainly get back to you about that question. I can follow up.
And
Madam
that
Chair,
is the, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I understand how the zoning works with the cities. I guess my question is, because it's a joint city-county public health department and this issue, I'm wondering if there are recommendations coming out of your working group that have put so much time and effort in this to encourage our cities to create stronger zoning to prevent tobacco sales.
You make an excellent point, Commissioner Castillo. This is something I think we can consider, and I think the number of partners too that we have at the table to continue these discussions, I think it's an important point, as we saw in 2017 and then now with the, trying to really restrict the use of coupons and promotions for the purchase of tobacco products. I think it's really important, and I think it just gets to the point that Selena made of where our tobacco products are being targeted in our communities. And so any way that we can limit that exposure and the purchasing of it, I think we're definitely in support of that. So thank you for lifting that up.
And we appreciate the first step that we are taking today to encourage that work to continue. Thank you, Commissioner Castillo. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this work. I am also in support of this resolution. I'm curious if we've done this in the past for any other item, and I'm thinking of alcohol because we know that there's a tremendous dependency on that and over dependency on that in our communities. And so I don't know how what that would look like, or I know that we don't allow advertising for alcohol or tobacco in our public buildings, right? And can you just confirm that for me? And so I'm just curious if there's been any other effort to reduce the use of coupons for any other product.
I'm not aware of the issue of alcohol, Commissioner McGuire, Madam Chair, but I just the banning of smoking, in and around our building, I think is a policy. But it's definitely something we can look into. I don't recall, as your newer public health director, any policy related to the restriction or on coupons being used for alcohol purchases in our community. But again, I think when we just look at the spectrum of what creates health and the things that contribute to good health outcomes, I think we can look across the spectrum at not only tobacco, alcohol use, substance abuse and use. And so I think it's something that it's just good public health practice to continue to explore, but also to promote in our communities on what creates health for our community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that recognition that there are clearly tobacco, but clearly alcohol as well. Really, overuse of alcohol really inhibits your good health. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I am very supportive of this as well. I think that we've done a number of things in collaboration, especially with the City of St. Paul, because of our joint public health department. And this is one more step that really tries to focus in on some of the disparities and who's impacted the most. And so, and we know that that people of color, people that have lower incomes are generally the ones that are targeted, especially young people. And so we have done a number of things in the past to try to curb that, to try to make sure that we're trying to make sure that the health inequities are addressed in any way that we can as well. And this is one more step. And I think it's so important that we do this. There's a list of all of the entities and organizations, nonprofits, churches, religious organizations, so many things. I mean, you can't name them all off here. I'd spend the next 10 minutes doing that, on how important this is to the constituency, to the people that we represent, to stop where we can, anyhow, the addiction to tobacco. And having my mother died at the age of 52 because of secondhand smoke. And she died of lung cancer and had never smoked. But It was interesting and heartbreaking, obviously, but no one should have to go through that. And so this is also very personal to me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that story. And of course, the stories that abound in our community from the devastation of tobacco addiction, tobacco smoking, and secondhand smoke impacts as well are many. So I appreciate the questions that have been asked, the responses from our public health team. We have no further hands up from commissioners. And unless there are further comments from the staff, we will be prepared to move on to item number 10, which is a support item on minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco in Ramsey County, supporting this recommendation. Director Holly, are there further comments on number 9?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, County Board, County Manager, for the support of this resolution. It's really important to our community. I just want to mention too, because in public health, we always want to come at this through an asset-based lens. And I know we mentioned a number of race-based disparities this morning, but I do just want to mention that it's important that we look at, what creates health, but also where our communities are situated, geography, right? And the things that, when we look at stores and food deserts and what's available. And so, if you look in certain communities, we have more access to tobacco-related products, as Commissioner Mata-Castillo mentioned. And so I don't want to further stigmatize communities that are underrepresented and that are really targeted throughout, I think, just the spectrum of public health, but also just with tobacco products, substance abuse, whatever that means, the lack of food deserts, just taking a public health approach. So I just want to lift that up this morning, that we want to make sure that this resolution is beneficial to the communities most impacted by banning, the use of tobacco-related products and also promotions and coupons in certain areas. So I just want to lift that up this morning, that there's so much wisdom and greatness in so many of our communities, and we just want to protect and advance the health of all in Ramsey County. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much also for that footnote. We appreciate it. And so we are appreciative of the presentation on number 9 and moving to number 10, our policy item, which is an action item to support the minimum floor price on cigarettes and smokeless tobacco in Ramsey County. Is there a motion on the item?
So moved, Madam Chair.
And
Second? I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion that we need on item number 10? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk to call the roll. Thank you.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Radon,
aye.
Maras Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough, McGuire,
Aye.
and Carter.
Aye, thank you very much. And that item has passed. We appreciate your support to ensure that we are not discounting disease in Ramsey County. And we will move on then to number 11, a presentation on our American Rescue Plan Act funds. We have been in the process of hearing the designated areas for which we are intending to provide American Rescue Plan support in advance in a presentation at our board meeting, having the opportunity to ask questions and discuss, and then to move forward in supporting those items as board members advise and indicate in a next meeting. So today is our meeting on our violence prevention initiatives. And I will call on County Manager O'Connor. Actually, I probably should have asked for a motion to get this on. Is there a motion on the item?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. Without discussion, I'll call on the board and County Manager O'Connor to start us out. County Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Just one timeline clarification to make sure we're all operating from the same page. Today, we will have an opening discussion regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funds that we are seeking to dedicate toward violence prevention initiatives across our community. There will be a follow-up on November 9th, which will be a full board workshop deep dive at that time, during which time additional programmatic implementation details as well as cost figures will be highlighted and identified. And then November 16th would be the date that the board would expect a request for board action to return here for hopeful action, which would authorize the ARPA funding. You may recall, there's not a slide on this, that today, that violence prevention was one of the tier 4 priorities requiring partnership, but leaning toward the end of transformative change across our community when we had our initial ARP board workshops. I was going to say many months ago, but a few months ago, somewhere in that range. And I'm really excited to be here today with a whole group of folks who will involve Deputy County Managers Hadeen and Williams, but I also want to give special recognition as well to Zachary Hilton, Jen Hamrick, Rich Stevens, Nancy Pass for their roles in helping to develop the work. Danny Givens, Mark Campbell, I think I got the list now for sure. And their important work in helping develop the proposal in front of you today. We come on a somber day to present this information about violence prevention after seeing and reeling from the events that occurred in our community, as the chair mentioned, this past weekend. And we've been working on the proposal in front of you here for the last few months, recognizing that transforming a system both requires deliberate work, but also moving with speed and agility, being willing to acknowledge where we know what we can do, and also being willing to admit places where we will have to learn as we go. As we move to the slides, and slide 2, highlighting the goals for today, there are 2 goals that we hope to do in this brief policy discussion today. First, we hope to broadly introduce the proposed areas in which the American Rescue Plan Act would see investments in violence prevention across Ramsey County, while also laying the foundation then for future evaluation and discussion. As I mentioned, this is a multi-year effort. It is a transformative effort, and it is one that requires us from day one to be thinking thoughtfully and strategically, while also thinking optimistically and recognizing that many of the changes we want to see can come through the types of initiatives here being proposed. Next slide, please. A reasonable question. Does Zach have it? Hey, Zach, next slide, please. Thanks. I think a reasonable question that often comes up right away that we want to seek to address is why these initiatives that you're going to hear some more about today. And we spent a lot of time trying to make sure we had thought through the rationale, and the we in that is not only the individuals I named. That we would involve suburban police chiefs, it would involve the chief of police in the city of St. Paul, it would involve the mayor in St. Paul, the city council and staff from St. Paul, it would involve community partners, it involves conversations that occurred during budget processes, equity action circle engagements, transforming systems together engagements, and the list goes on and on. This is not something that we thought up on the back of a napkin, but is instead a continued effort to build on momentum and learnings from both locally and around the country where we know we can make change. At the same time, it's important to note that some of the current violence that we are seeing in our community, while we seek to change it and we seek to change the long-term trajectory, is also national in scope. Without better control of the flow of guns into the hands of individuals across our society, gun violence will continue to be an issue that plagues us. It is why the county board has in the past cited that gun violence is a public health crisis in this country. And unfortunately, this last weekend is but one of many reminders we see in the media every single week to that effect. And so what we see is that communities across the country, regardless of the specific programs they have unfortunately seen similar upticks in gun violence and crime during the past year. That does not mean we should stand pat. It does not mean we cannot make efforts, but it does mean that while we take efforts locally, we appreciate the work of the county board and all partners to continue to push for broader change that changes the system outside of our community, as we know that the guns that are being used here are not being built here. They are finding their way into our community and are a part of the issue that we face. However, there are 3 specific reasons why we cite these initiatives. Today's current response system lacks enough tools and responses to be effective in the way that we hope, coming out of how we think about dispatched resources from the Emergency Communications Center. If you were to walk through your house all day with a toolbox and all you had was a hammer, every solution would need to look somewhat the same, but we all intuitively know that a better toolbox would lead to better results on the projects you would take on. As I already mentioned, there are many different spaces that have paved the way. Two that have been the most profound and most specific involve the Transforming Systems Together table and Community First Public Safety Commission, which was convened by the mayor in the city of St. Paul and involved representation from Ramsey County at a leadership and staff level. And third, as we think about our values and the work that we do, we know that a disproportionate number of Black and American Indian individuals are engaged with the criminal justice system. We know that these initiatives that we propose here have the opportunity to divert or even prevent people from coming near the criminal justice system, in many cases when that can be avoided, and provide the types of prevention programming that reduce the risks of harm and long-term collateral consequences. There are absolutely ways that we can better engage to ensure that systems work for everyone, and this is but one of our continued efforts in those spaces. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy County Managers Williams and Hadeen to walk through the specifics of the proposal, and I look forward to being here at the end to answer any preliminary questions you may have today. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me the opportunity to provide the opening update.
Thank you, Ryan. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Deputy County Manager Scott Williams, and so we're excited to be here today to be talking about these violence prevention priority projects. We're going to be talking about two initiatives. First is, Zach, we should be on slide 4. It looks like we are, thank you. Appropriate responses to certain types of 911 calls. This will involve development of new response types, enhancing our 911 dispatch response to county-wide. This will involve expanding social services and public health responses that are more available in real time, in the moment, essentially dispatchable resources. Expanding beyond that to exploring some community-based response options that go beyond just system responders, but involve community, and we'll get into that in more detail as we start implementing this process and engaging with community to look at what those possibilities are. And then, of course, to support that, we'll need enhanced 911 call-taking protocols and dispatching protocols so these new response options can be fully and appropriately utilized. The second is Healing Streets. Healing Streets exists today, but is supported by essentially a handful of staff doing a great job, but trying to address a huge public health crisis. And essentially, this initiative significantly ramps up our Healing Streets resources, creating dedicated resource pool to meet our participant needs in the moment of crisis, and additional and intentional outreach to individuals who have caused harm. This is a community-centered, healing-based approach that really brings a public health lens to the problem of violence in our community. Slide 5, please. So appropriate responses for 911. This is essentially expanding the menu of options, if you will, for our 911 dispatch process. Right now, today, or traditionally, for call responses, you can send law enforcement, you can send medics, you can send fire, you can send animal control, you can send parking enforcement. That's really the menu of options you have. Otherwise, or send no one, essentially decline service because you don't have any resources. Often what we find is if we're presented with a 911 call that was prompted by behavioral issues that are not necessarily criminal related, they're behavioral related. They're behavior issues that are not criminal. We either can't send somebody, or we'll default to law enforcement or medics or some combination of the two. That kind of response, when you're dealing with a behavioral crisis issue, it's really a mismatched response. And that mismatch, it puts everyone at risk. It puts the person in crisis at risk. It can put the caller at risk. It can put the first responders at risk. You know, when we talked about, we had this conversation with a group of local police chiefs a little over a month ago, and that whole concept of the mismatch being a risk to everyone involved, I think really landed well. These are calls that most of the police officers don't want to go on because they're just not trained for it. So we're looking at expanding beyond our existing response types, looking at really a more enhanced co-response model where social services and public health and even community resources are going out with law enforcement, going out with fire. We're doing these on a very limited basis right now, but it's really not a true co-response model in that the social services, public health resources are not being dispatched simultaneously with law enforcement. Law enforcement goes first, and then you have social services being called out as needed. So it's not quite in the moment, there's a delay, so it's really not a true co-response model. We want to ramp that up and have dedicated responders from social services, public health, and eventually from community to be able to respond in the moment for certain types of calls. Moving to number 2, the non-traditional responses. This is where we would have certain types of calls where there's no immediate risk to the safety of the person or persons around that individual. So we would look at situations where is it necessary to send police? Is it necessary to send fire? If not, then let's send social services, public health, community, whatever alternative resources that are available and dispatchable in the moment, available 24/7, to be able to address these behavioral issues that are not necessarily crime or they aren't criminal based, and there isn't an immediate threat to safety for the individuals or for the responders. So essentially, giving us an ability to provide service, but not have a police-only response or not have a co-response, because law enforcement is just not needed in that case, and preserves the capacity of law enforcement to respond to other calls. And then finally, a community response where we have community, if we over time develop community resources, and maybe we don't need a systems response at all because social services, public health, those are still system responders. We believe there is room for a community to respond, whether that's a contracted entity through community providing services that maybe systems providers could support, but we might decide it's better to contract with community, or other responses. And this could be something as simple as a dispute resolution. You have parties that aren't getting along, they're quarreling, it's escalating, and rather than just say this is not a police response, this is a civil matter, we're not sending anyone, maybe we send someone to help defuse the situation, can head off a situation that could escalate into the future and become a public safety response. Next slide. So how would this work? Well, with additional response options, we would take 911 calls as we do today, but we would have, through some enhancements through our emergency communication center call taking process, we would have additional call screening protocols where we would be able to leverage these additional responses that we will develop through this initiative. And of course, at the bottom there, in the red, traditional response model, where we send law enforcement, fire, EMS, or some combination thereof, that will continue to be the bedrock of our 911 response process. The majority of calls will continue to be served by a traditional law enforcement, fire, or emergency medical response. That we're not proposing to phase those out in any way. This is about creating options for situations where we don't want a police-only response, or where we feel that law enforcement is simply not needed at the scene. So if you go to the top there, co-response model. Again, we have co-respond being done right now in part of our county. But it is not truly, it's not a true co-response model in the sense that it's dispatched upon the 911 dispatch with law enforcement, with medics. So that's something we would change. And then the traditional response model, non-traditional response model, as I said, where social services, public health, community resource goes out without law enforcement, maybe with medics, maybe without medics. And that could change in the moment. If they get on the scene and the situation changes and they find, oh, there is a situation here, there is a criminal, significant crime being committed that was not part of the 911 call, there is a significant risk factor, this person has a weapon, they can back out and call back to dispatch and change the response. This can be can change in the moment, and our protocols will allow for that. And then again, the community-only response. This will be, community will be not only at the table, but will be involved in co-design for this initiative. And we look forward to looking at different models throughout the country, see what's being done out there, and see what kind of creative solutions our own community members can come up with for ways to serve the community, serve some of these calls where we don't need a systems response at all. Next slide, please. So what do we need to do with the ECC to make this work? Because of the nature, the expanded types of calls that we would be, not only would we be taking, we take these calls today, but the decision tree is far simplified. We're deciding, are we sending law, are we sending medics, are we sending both, are we sending no one? We would take more time to assess the nature of these calls and who are we going to send. And we're not going to make 911 call takers, we're not going to train them to be social workers. So we need social workers in the ECC to consult on these calls. And again, remember, these are calls for co-response, non-traditional response. For non-traditional response calls, these are calls where there's a determination there's no immediate threat to the individual, no immediate threat to responders. So we've got some time. We've got some time to ask more questions. We've got more time to conference in the social worker and to make some decisions about what's the most appropriate response. So the social workers embedded in this ECC will be to support that expanded call taking process. Obviously, we'll need training for current staff, both on the call taking and on the dispatch side. We'll be engaging communities and our other systems partners for input and guidance. So everyone, we have buy-in across the board, and communities have been involved in designing these responses, and then obviously develop best practices. Some of this we're going to be able to get from other parts of the country that are doing some of this stuff. For other protocols we're going to have to develop on our own. And then finally, supporting wellness for ECC staff. Taking 911 calls is a tough job. And this is a tough environment to work in. And we're not making it any easier by expanding the scope of the types of calls that we're taking. So we're going to leverage the presence of social workers in the ECC, not to utilize them as counselors, but to help ECC management improve our strategies for how we support our employees in the ECC. And this is not a replacement for EAP program, but just help ECC management create a more supportive environment for ECC employees that are doing a really tough job. So that's the Appropriate Responses Initiative, and for Healing Streets, I will hand it off to Deputy County Manager Kathy Hadeen.
Thanks, Scott. I have the opportunity to walk you through the Healing Streets proposal here. So I want to give you a quick overview of this work so far. Healing Streets, as you know, started by Danny Givens and now led by Mark Campbell. It began back in 2019, which seems like a really long time ago in COVID time. It began as a public health, violence prevention, and intervention initiative with a focus on healing and grief services for survivors of group and gun violence. In addition to the healing and grief work, the community-based violence prevention and intervention services have expanded from 2 staff to 7, including 4 community mediators. And we do have a PowerPoint that goes along with this. Those community mediators are influencers. They're influencers in community with lived experience and are survivors themselves. They respond in real time to group and gun violence and work to navigate community relationships to interrupt further violence from taking place. Healing Streets actively works to disrupt the cycle of violence by providing needed healing and wraparound services to individuals and their families who have been impacted by the violence and to those who have caused harm to others and their families. To raise up and meet the needs of communities in Ramsey County, additional resources need to be allocated toward this work. There are 4 key direct service areas of Healing Streets that we're bringing forward and continuing to move on. One is the community-based prevention and intervention work. The other is healing and grief services for survivors of group and gun violence, both of which are being implemented currently. And hospital-based violence prevention and intervention, which is moving forward in the strategic planning and implementation stages, and school-based intervention and peer advocacy work that will begin as staff capacity increases. And if we're on the PowerPoint, I'd say next slide, please. Thank you. Even though community violence is still lower than the all-time recorded highs in the 1990s, it feels intense right now. And as was mentioned a few times during this board meeting, with the horrific gun violence event of early Sunday morning and the tragic loss of life and traumatic injuries, both physical and psychological, it's unfortunate, but it's an example of how important it is to increase capacity for Healing Streets work. In addition to the partnerships with grief and healing services, Healing Streets is also in partnership with the St. Paul Police Department. The team continues to build critical relationships that reduce additional violent events and help support law enforcement resources through the reduction of retaliatory behavior. The team is also working with community corrections to ensure young people being released back into community have needed resources and supportive relationships. Healing Streets is also connected to an internal services and supports team that includes social services, public health, community corrections, and workforce solutions to ensure people in the program have access to community resources and services. These ARPA funds will allow the Healing Streets work to scale up and would focus on the following: increased community mediators. Those are people, again, on the street as defined earlier, providing funding resources for in-the-moment needs to keep individuals and families safe, providing staff resource for the hospital-based strategy, creating a fellowship program for people who have caused harm, who can commit to a program that invests in their well-being through training, skill building, mentorship, and support, and creating community health responder positions who can work alongside the community mediators to provide more short and long-term connections with people who have been harmed and those who have caused harm. Next slide, please. Altogether, these additional responses will provide a wider range of options in responding to people in need. The co-response model, the non-traditional responses, the community responses, along with the increased capacity for Healing Streets, we anticipate the cost of these ARPA funds requests to be around $16 million, which will take us through 2024. As a system, we will be evaluating what's working and what's not working with these investments and making adjustments as we go. When we meet for the board workshop on November 9th, we'll dive into greater detail around strategies, staffing needs, and costs. Because of this new effort, we will need to build a sustainable path forward, one that takes us beyond these critical ARPA funds. As stated in the beginning of this discussion, this effort fits into a larger health, safety, and justice transformational structure, some of which is being led, as was stated, by Transforming Systems Together, and will be, again, connected to the City of St. Paul through their Office of Neighborhood Safety. There are also additional partnerships being built with our suburban cities as well, with the work that's already began with co-response in Maplewood and additional conversations and partnerships in Roseville and other cities. Next slide, please. County Manager O'Connor did a great job of naming a ton of people who have been doing really important work over the past year or more to bring us to where we are today. Another huge thank you to Zachary Hilton. Without him, this work would not have been envisioned and organized in this way. And I do want to lift up Sophia Thompson, who is also online, in addition to everybody else who's been named. Her work with social services and our social work capacity is important to lift up here too. And I also want to name Dr. Raj, who has been a key partner connected to community as we move forward. We've also been working with the courts, county attorney's office, and all the other departments, including workforce solutions, local police departments, and fire, to figure out and work through intentional path forward that expands the existing available services. As I stated before, we'll bring this information and more into the workshop on November 9th to help answer in-depth questions, and I'll hand it back over to County Manager O'Connor for additional discussion and questions.
Madam Chair, we would stand for any discussions or questions that you may have, and a thank you to the board both for pushing along the way as we've been pulling together our comprehensive ARPA investments to serve this community, both during and as we recover from COVID-19, and for ensuring that violence prevention is a priority across Ramsey County at the county-wide level when we think about dispatch and the resources available, and then in the partnerships that we forge with our municipalities to ensure prevention and on-the-ground support is happening in every corner as well. With that, we would stand for any questions that you may have and look forward to November 9th.
Thank you very much to all of you for the work that's been done, all who are on the line here. Thankful for what you have been doing on an ongoing basis. I would just comment before calling on board members for questions that we all watched coverage, I'm sure, as since the weekend's events, many comments have been made on television, online, regarding prevention and the need for community working together. The fact that the police and the community have to be engaged together. And of course, 911 services as a part of that. You know, this work, which has been in process and being built over the years, being presented to us now and with the opportunity to provide ARPA support, is work that we need in order to ensure that our responses, front end and back end, are optimal. They are the best responses to achieve the best possible outcomes. And that's what we see being presented here in conversations, particularly with the Community First Public Safety Commission and with supporters of that work. We are talking about optimal responses that get us to where we need to be as a community for overall health and safety and well-being. And with that, thank you again. I will call on Commissioners Reinhardt to start, with Commissioner McGuire and Maris Castillo next. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I am very pleased that we're having this discussion now, and I know we've got more discussion and we'll actually be acting on this in November. But I think that, you know, there are so many factors, and I think we all know that. You know, we want to be able to fix things, and sometimes we have to take a step back and say, okay, what do we need to do to be more proactive than reactive? And when it comes to things like gun violence, especially, and other issues as well, but it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed. I mean, the fact is that gun violence is something that is happening across the country, the increased gun violence. And there's so many factors. So again, sometimes it seems like it can just be, okay, what can we do? Well, I think what's laid out here are some pretty concrete steps that we can investing in people, investing in something that de-escalates rather than escalates the violence, because sometimes that can happen inadvertently if you don't have the right response, because our police officers are there for public safety. The social workers oftentimes are needed because of the underlying issues that are causing the problems in the first place. So I am very pleased with this response. Again, prevention, all of the work that we're doing on transforming systems together, a lot of times people don't connect these things, but they are very much connected. If you have a job, if you have housing, if you have enough food to eat, if you have the medical and the care that you need from a health perspective. So investing in this, investing ARPA funds in healing streets and in the very first connection that people have when they are in crisis just makes so much sense to me. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this. Because again, prevention, I know that's what we are all trying to work towards because of the fact that reacting rather than being proactive is not something that is really going to make the difference that we need to make in our society. So big words for what we can potentially get out of this, but to me, this is an absolutely great start and where we should be putting our ARPA funds to really make a difference here. And that's what it's about, a positive difference. So being proactive, thank you to staff, and I look forward to hearing even more when we come to the vote in November.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will echo Commissioner Reinhardt's, gratitude, and our entire board, I know, is grateful for this work, and thank you for this early conversation, and I also look forward to the November 9th workshop when we can really dig deeper. But it reminds me, all of this great work reminds me of when I was first in the legislature and I was approached by Ramsey County to help with with little mini grants to communities on you are the one who can make the peace and turn off the violence. And so I just know that Ramsey County has been on the forefront of these efforts for a really long time. That was almost 25 years ago. And so I know that our departments have been working on this and continuing to do that. And I'm glad for this continued effort in this. I do have a couple of questions just to help me put this in context. So with our American Rescue Plan dollars, are we thinking of investing in more community-based programs or in helping with our infrastructure, in our internal Ramsey County infrastructure? Is it both? I'm guessing it's both, but I'm thinking that this early money is really about strengthening our own capacity in Ramsey County. Could you just comment on that? How do I think about these dollars?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, wonderful question. You'll see a more delineated breakdown of where that money and investment looks as we move into November, but it is both. It is both a recognition that the system needs the appropriate response out of the Emergency Communication Center, as Scott identified. And thanks to that entire department for being willing to be on this journey of both change and improvement. They have been nothing but stalwarts through this entire process from Director Pass on down. And working with social services, we think about that social worker part around a dispatch. But on the community side, we cannot do this work without community being a partner as well, both thinking of them as a potential dispatchable resource in the moment, but also a preventative resource that we want to build. And that's been an important ongoing conversation with cities, where we're hoping that cities will find opportunities to invest on the side of prevention to prevent the need for ever needing to dial 911 in the first place.
Thank you for that response, and I appreciate that, and I think it's great. It's great work all around. And so I have one more question, Madam Chair, and this would be for Scott, for Director Williams, excuse me, or Deputy County Manager Williams. I learned this last week about the efforts on the 988 calls, which are mental health emergencies. And I'm just, and we may not want to talk about it now, but it was, I wasn't clear that we were embarking on those efforts, but it was something that was passed into law, a year ago at the federal level. to implement a system on 988. And I was just curious if you had any comments on that, and maybe we can talk about it at our next workshop. But are we thinking about implementing that, or what are we thinking about doing with 988?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, that is, the 988 is in the planning phase right now. There's discussions statewide. Actually, from our organization, and Barry is the lead on that. So, and which we feel is appropriate, since that's really more of a kind of a social services lens through that solution. So we've been staying informed on that on the ECC side, but really we feel like social services take the lead on that. And that's something we can expand on at the workshop November 9th.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Because, yeah, I'd love a timeline, or whether we should be starting to think about promoting it and things. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Madison.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this proposal. You know, it goes to show, as County Manager O'Connor mentioned, we've been working on this for a really long time. And just like when we stood up Healing Streets for the first time, it wasn't that we had a lot of land room. The gun violence in our community was happening and occurring as we were building out the system. And this is another example where, you know, we had this workshop to talk about funding to prevent more violence as we see our first mass shooting in our city over the weekend, because this work is going on, and we know that that we need to respond. And so I appreciate the work that's gone into today, and the opportunity to ask questions in preparation for the workshop coming up in November to go even deeper. I really appreciate the co-responder model and the idea of thinking that out. And as I'm thinking about what that might look like, you know, and Director Hedin mentioned fellowship as well for people, you know, that, you know, long term we could see people who have maybe completed the fellowship become our co-responders, and or we create fellowships for our law enforcement partners. You know, part of the solution is bringing social workers in to work alongside police, but it also is a dual licensure potentially of law enforcement to be social workers, right? And so there's some opportunity there, and I hope that we're open to that opportunity to see how do we do this to make sure people are safe, because, you know, those response, even if it's a mental health situation, it can turn quickly, as we know, and our folks need to be ready and prepared. So exciting stuff. The one question I have, and it doesn't have to be answered today, and it can come back for the workshop, is in the evaluation area. And this is one of those things that it's not a quantitative evaluation, but qualitative. And how do we know that these investments are working? I know you addressed that we'll adjust as we go along if things are working or not working, but what are those questions we'll be asking? What are those things that we will be evaluating to show that there is a change over time? This isn't quick work. This is important work. And it is, you know, we've gotten to this point in our society because of hundreds of years of oppression and discrimination and racism and anger and violence. We're not going to fix it in the short amount of time, and maybe not even in the time that we'll have funding to fix, right? It is a long-term investment. So just thinking about how we are going to evaluate so we know how to talk about it, how do we share with community, and how do we demonstrate it's working. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Matas Castillo, thank you for that question. We will take that into consideration as we talk about evaluation, and the broader evaluation work across ARPA investments will be a part of a proposal that comes forward to you in the coming weeks as a part of a broader, what I'll call a catch-all piece of like there's many threads, and this would be but one. And the answer for evaluation will look slightly different for something like the Emergency Communications Center, which is a very process heavy, very technically oriented, very, in some ways, easy to count and see some of what's happening, versus Healing Streets, where Commissioner Matas Castillo's points I'll let stand as she shared them, because I think that's exactly the type of thing we need to be thoughtful about as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We look forward to our next steps, including the workshop upcoming, and then the opportunity to advance funding from our ARPA funds for violence prevention in November. I want to say thank you for the presentation, for the questions that have been asked. I see no further questions from commissioners. We are going to move forward then in our agenda. We do have a challenge of getting through our county connections and our board comments in time for a closed session that we have scheduled for this morning. And we do need to have at least 45 minutes for that session. So with that challenge, I am going to move us on back to the county manager to our county connections.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Challenge accepted. I will move very quickly through 3 updates. On a good news update, Director Hadeen was able to Deputy County Manager Hadeen on Friday sent a very nice note back to regions, thanking them for the support and navigation to ensure that part of our hospital-based intervention program with Healing Streets becomes a reality. We've been having meetings scheduled with the region trauma leads, with our Healing Streets staff, the emergency rooms nurse leads, security, admin, and social work to ensure that we can bring together a model in which trauma work and grief work starts from the moment someone is in the hospital. And that's challenging to do from an implementation perspective. We are on a path to do that, and I am very excited to get to tell you that out loud today. Huge thank you to our partners at Regions for sharing a vision of a safer and more connected community and working very hard with our teams to bring that to fruition with the Healing Streets leaders. Our enterprise cashiering and receipting management system, starting on October 6th, went live at Parks and Recreation as a part of their Civic Rec implementation. This entire project is part of our Residents First strategic priority. We're in phase 1A. Phase 1B will begin on December 20th, and we'll take the same system into the medical examiner, health and wellness admin, information and public records admin, as well as tax accounting. Phase 3 is scheduled then for end of December or early January, which becomes a one-stop shop, the online payment portal where residents will be able to pay for anything they purchase or owe the county, including eventually their taxes. One portal, one door. This is an enterprise-wide solution. It eventually changes how all departments will be taking payment into the county. This has been something discussed approximately since I joined the county 8 years ago. And we are going to be able to provide a better customer experience, we believe, across the entire county, making it easier and more convenient for every resident and business who does work with Ramsey County. I want to thank Parks and Recreation for leading from the front. I want to thank the Enterprise Cashiering and Receipt Management Project team, who's been led by our Auditor Treasurer, Heather Bessler. And then finally, very delayed, but as I was going through a backlog of emails, I found an update from the end of August that I still wanted to share here today. So it's not new news, but it's important news, which is that Arnold Ventures selected the Ramsey County Corrections Department strategy proposal for reducing revocations to become a phase 2 implementation work. So we've talked about the revocations work before. We had talked about being a phase 1 piece. They saw us as someone to continue into phase 2. By way of reminder, revocations have been a unique challenge in Ramsey County over time. We have sat at the wrong end of where we want to be in that spectrum, and the department has taken significant steps to address that. Phase 2 involves technical support as well as funding to complete necessary changes in the transformation of our system. We're also partnering with the Robina Institute in rolling out this piece, as well as assisting in reducing unnecessary revocations while also looking to decrease the number of individuals on probation. Huge thanks to Community Corrections, and thanks for their partnership in giving me a month and a half to get to that good news update. I am done, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those concise updates, and congratulations for the work that is being done and the recognition of the progress that is being made as well. I see no questions from commissioners. Again, thank you for the county connections. We're going to move to our commissioner updates again with a challenge for completing within the next 10 minutes or so that we'll have time for our closed session. I will start by calling on Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I will I'll talk about 2 things that are connected in a way, and I'll have to show you what that is. Okay, first of all, I was able to participate in the Mississippi River Restoration and Resilience Initiative video that is being done. This is an initiative by Congresswoman McCollum, and we were able to get the National Association of Counties to support this initiative. It is truly an important part of our environment, the Mississippi River, but it's also about the economics, the disparities. There's so many different aspects of this, but I was really honored to be part of that video so that we can move this forward and hopefully have something that will have a very positive impact on the 2,300-mile Mississippi River. And I can get you all kinds of statistics, but I will leave that for another day. The other thing that I really wanted to highlight was how I celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday. And it's tied to the Mississippi River because of the stories and what happened here in Minnesota, especially near the where the Mississippi River and the Minnesota River come together, and not wanting to forget really what happened there. And it's pretty atrocious, to be honest with you. So I attended a screening of the documentary by Rita Davern and Melody Gilbert called Stories I Didn't Know. And it's really worth checking out. I know that they have a website that is storiesIdidn'tknow.com. I know that it's going to be, this documentary is going to be played on through the BBC and public television, and that information will be on the website as well. But it's just, when you look at Pike Island and the fact that the Dakota people were in Minnesota for, I think it was either 12 or 14,000 years, and what happened to the community and what continues to happen to the community, we really need to take action, is what it comes down to. And so I wanted to lift that up and how important it is. And I know that we've done a lot of work in this area, but we've got more to do. We need to take more action, and I'll talk more about that at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner. We appreciate the update. And I will go to Commissioner Fretham.
In the interest of time, I will not provide an update.
Commissioner Maris Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to officially now announce that Ramsey County received an award last week. As you know, I logged in remotely from Nashville, and it's public that we received an award from the International Economic Development Committee, a silver award on our racial equity work for our economic and inclusion plan. So this is a huge shout out and to the team who worked on that to get us the plan, which we all know we're already implementing, and the team from Economic Development, Fourth Economy, the Center for Economic Inclusion, and MZ Strategies, who really put in all that effort and work, and congratulations on this huge recognition. It's a great opportunity for the team to realize, and for the whole world to see the work that we are doing around economic inclusion and racial equity. So congrats to the team. I also wanted to just share quickly that I attended the Keystone Keys to Success Gala fundraising event, which raises money for a food shelf. And as many of you know, they're working on a new location on University Avenue. They've been a great partner with the county in distributing foods throughout the pandemic and making sure our community is resourced, and it was a great success. And lastly, I just wanted to share that we had the opportunity to give a private tour back to our economic inclusion team and our government relations team to Senator Johnson Stewart, who is on the bonding committee, who came out and took a tour of River's Edge, which is pretty awesome. And she's really excited. You know, she's the one member of the bonding committee that has an engineering background. And so she wanted to really take a look at it and is very excited about the project. So anytime we have opportunity to share with our legislators, especially members of the bonding committee, we're happy to do that. And Josh Josh Olson did a fantastic job demonstrating the project and talking through it, and she's really excited. She's posted a video about it on her social media pages, worthy of taking a look at. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for sharing those pieces of good news and for supporting us in that regard as well. I will turn to Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things here, 3 things actually. I just want to give a shout out to our affordable housing and homelessness team. They presented an amazing presentation at the Ramsey County League of Local Governments last Friday. And I just want to encourage all of you to attend these league meetings because they've just been so packed with amazing information. This time it was headed by Keith Lattimore and Lonnie Adelin, Max Holdhusen, and Tanisha Johnson-Trice. And they did a joint presentation with Ricardo Cervantes with the city of St. Paul. And there were a number of people presenting, and we had almost 40 people on the call to hear what's going on with housing in Ramsey County. And the communities are all very interested in this. And it was a great start of a conversation. So shout out to our amazing team who did a great job. And just a reminder to all of you as my colleagues that these are really great meetings to attend, and they're virtual right now on once a month. So look for those announcements when they come up. Also, the AMC board met last Friday and had a good meeting, and I know Commissioner Carter and McDonough and I were all on that call. Also, I want to remind everyone that District 10, that's our district, is meeting this Friday between 8 and noon. You can either be virtual or in person. They're also continuing our housing discussion. These are really great meetings. And also, this is where we vote on our priorities. So I encourage everyone to at least log in, because if you log in and you can't stay for the whole time, you'll still get sent a ballot. But they won't send you a ballot unless you log in to the meeting. So be sure and log on to the District 10 meeting on Friday. And then just to let you know that Commissioner Mattis Castillo as the vice chair and myself as the chair of the legislative team or committee, we're having a Ramsey County delegation meeting this Thursday, and our chief financial officer Alex is going to present there, and so that'll be a great meeting with our delegation. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No report. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega. Thank you to all of you for accepting the challenge. I am, with that, also going to delay my report until next time, and I will be calling our meeting to a conclusion. We do want to take a 5-minute break after this meeting, and then we will be reprising on a separate link for the closed session that is scheduled to discuss the sheriff's budget appeal. I am at this point in time then, without further comment or question from the board, ready to adjourn our meeting, and we will be reprising on a separate link at 11:17. Our meeting is now adjourned.
Madam Chair,
yes.
Could I ask that the link be sent to me?
Yes.
I, for some reason, don't seem to have that particular one here.
Yes, Ryan has his thumb up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take 5.